Okay, today's video is going to be an install video. This one is going to be video 1 of 2 today. We have an AFE power rear diff cover that we're going to install on a Chrysler 9 1/4, which is the Ram half-ton, I think from like 98 all the way to pretty much new. And then we have an AFE power oil pan for the Eco Diesel. Now both of these are, from my understanding, an increase in fluid. With that being said, I bought 3 quarts of differential fluid because the factory is 2 1/4, so we will find out if 3 quarts will be enough. And I bought 2.5 gallons of oil for the extra oil pan that has 2 extra quarts in it. And then I bought some Hot Shots additive for that to make up for the little bit extra that it's going to need over that. What you're going to need is obviously the pan, whatever comes with it, which is one of them comes with RTV and bolts. I need to check the oil pan. The oil pan might have come with bolts too. That I'm not exactly sure of. I'll look before I make that video. Symmetric wrenches, symmetric sockets, and if you're like me, a speed ratchet and an impact. So this is basically going to be a video on how to install it and fill it. So here is the rear diff cover, powder coated red, the oil pan powder coated red. Here's the install kit for the oil pan, and then the tools. So I'm going to get all this stuff underneath the truck, and we will take the factory pan off and start draining the rear differential fluid. Okay, here is the factory pan, and then here's the AFE pan, which obviously, yes, it will hold more fluid. So what you're going to do is, or when we're looking at it, we have a drain plug, which obviously you have to tighten. You have a sight plug, which you can also fill from, and then a top fill plug. So I'm just going to take these 2 out for now. And then the first step is going to take this pan off, which this pan does look like a 13 millimeter. And hopefully, if we are lucky, the sway bar won't be in the way. If the sway bar is in the way, we just have to unbolt it, which for some reason I am missing a bolt over there. And that looks like a 15 mil. So, okay, so what I didn't mention was to grab some sort of a screwdriver or pry bar. You can see my fluid that's draining is actually in really good shape. This is not a pry bar or screwdriver, but I was lazy and it was close by, and it will work. I know. You know, you have to put it in there and just kind of tap a little bit. Once it breaks free, then you can just actually go like this and get the rest of it to actually break the rest of the way loose. I do believe I actually changed the fluid on this probably 20,000 miles ago, so you know that's why you see the reddish orange RTV and the fluid being in decent shape. So once you get it to drain, you'll pop the cover off, and then at that point, basically the next step will be to clean off the rear part of the rear end with some sort of a wire wheel or razor blade. Most people are going to tell you to use a razor blade, so that way you don't get wire wheel material inside of the differential. So I'm not going to pull this out one-handed without making a mess, so I'm going to put the camera down here and pull this out and continue to let it drain. All right, so it absolutely will not fit on there with the sway bar. So take a 15 mil and drop your sway bar while this drains. If you see, it is actually fairly clean how it is. In the automotive world, most people would take some sort of a paper towel, clean the bottom of this out, clean the surface off, and stick the new pan on how it is. Just make sure there's no, just make sure to take like the little chunks of rubber that are still over the edge or RTV and get rid of them. But that's about that for that. The next step is going to be taking the RTV out and basically laying RTV on there and prepping it and letting it sit for a while. One of the other things that I will add that I think would be a benefit in the future, and I will do it myself as well the next time I change the fluid, is I'm going to get some sort of a magnet and either stick it in here or stick it inside the differential in a spot where it will not be in the way. That way any type of shavings or anything like that will stick to the magnet itself, just to make sure that the fluid stays clean as long as possible. So here is the differential cover installed with none of the plugs in it yet. Now, the smart thing is to tell you to look through the instructions or go online and find the exact torque specs for these, okay? Now, I've been doing this, I don't know, a long time, and bolts like these I do by feel. So I use a wrench, I use a speed ratchet to bring them all nice and flat, and then I use a wrench and I go opposite, and after everything's opposite and I like the way it feels, then I just kind of do a once around in a circle and check it, and that's how I do it. You know, the right way is to use a torque wrench, but I don't want to go get my torque wrench and I don't want to look up the specs. And it's not an engine head, so in my opinion, it's not an engine head or a wheel, so in my opinion, it doesn't really matter. The next step is going to be putting everything back in where it belongs. The drain plug. Now keep in mind, this is the drain plug for the AFE. There is a drain plug right here for the differential. So I took and I drained out the, or not drained out, so I emptied it via removing the cover, which you can do. You don't have to. If you were just changing the fluid, you could have just left the cover on and drained it and filled it through the rubber hole in the front. So actually, I did not pull the cover. That is factory. I forgot. I just drained it and filled it. So now in the future, you will just take both of these drain plugs out, drain it, and then fill it from the side or from the top. Now, this is the plug for the side. This is going to take a 1/2 inch drive in order to tighten this. This is the plug for the top. It is also going to take a 1/2 inch drive. So I'm probably going to fill it from the top. So basically maneuver your drain so that it can pour out the side here, and you're just going to fill from the top here, and once it starts coming out the side, that's how you know it's full, and then this job will be done. Obviously put this bar back on. So 3 quarts was the magic number. You can see the excess is draining out the side right there. So honestly, you literally take the cover off, go right here and tip it up and fill. It is the least messy way I've ever done a rear differential, and I am super happy with the results. Now, this year model Ram takes 75-90 gear oil, okay? But a couple years newer, they take 75-140. So I'm using 75-140. Use whatever you want. That is up to you. But this is what I use in my personal truck. The recommendation is, if it's just a driver, 75-90 is more than likely fine. But if you do any number of towing or heavy towing, you should use the thicker oil. So that's going to conclude this here. Basically, use your 1/2 inch drive to put in the pipe plugs back where they go after this is done draining. Now I am slightly at an angle in the driveway here, just a hair. So I'm actually going to end up putting my plug in while there's still fluid coming out, because my truck is tipped a hair to the back right now. So I'm going to put this in, and then I'm going to go back up here and do the same thing and put this in. And then once you have these tight, you just take your rag or whatever you use to clean the differential out and wipe the excess fluid off, and you have a nice clean new rear differential cover. Put the sway bar up and this job is done. Just the last little section at the finished product. You can kind of see that it is very tight fit, but it does fit. And it fits roughly 3 quarts. And I believe the factory is 2 1/4 quart, give or take. So, you know, there's an extra 3/4 quart of fluid. Not really sure if that'll make a huge difference, but going from a steel cover to an aluminum cast cover, these fins probably don't make a huge difference, but they do help increase the surface area. And it is aluminum, meaning the heat that's generated will quickly absorb into the cover and it will quickly dissipate. So this should help a little bit while towing, in order to keep the rear differential a little bit cooler. If you really want to get into keeping it cool, look into the new 5th gens, because they actually have a oil cooler for the rear differential.